pass control to your host, Nathan Greenstein.
Thank you, Jean, and welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are really excited to give you a first look at the new ROS Data Dashboard. So you've already met Jean Goodman from Apt Associates, who will be helping us keep the webinar running smoothly today. And also from Apt, we have Caroline Roddy, who will be covering questions and polls. And I'm Nathan Greenstein. I will be walking you through how to access and use the ROS Data Dashboard. And we're also lucky to have some colleagues from HUD in the audience today, both from the ROS Program Office and field offices. So thank you for being here. Our plan for today is to introduce the data dashboard, show where to access it, and demonstrate how to start exploring your data by going on a tour of 3 different visualizations in the dashboard. And we'll try to answer questions as we go, but we may not get to all of them just due to time constraints. So you can use the WebEx Q&A function, as Jean just demoed, to ask a question at any time by typing it in and sending it to us. And this is the best way to submit a question, but you can also use the raise hand button to tell us that you have a question, and we will unmute you to ask it if time allows. But again, given time constraints, we will better be able to answer questions that you submit by typing them into the Q&A function. And we'll try to return to any remaining questions that we don't get to at the end of the webinar today. And if we don't make it through everything, then we'll respond to remaining questions after the webinar. Now, this is the first in a series of 2 webinars. The next one on November 19th will be dedicated to answering questions from you and will give us a chance to go into more depth. There is also another series of webinars for next year that will focus on more advanced usage of the dashboard. So today is mainly an intro and a first look. So let's start with an overview of what the dashboard is. First of all, the dashboard was released to the public in October, and most importantly, it visualizes the data that ROS grantees like you submit to HUD every year, and it shows you how you're performing based on that data. And there's one version, the dashboard by grantee, and that one's designed for grantees to use. And another, the dashboard by state, is similar, but it shows how all of the grantees in a particular state are doing all together. And today's webinar is mainly designed for grantees, and so it uses the dashboard by grantee version, but the 2 are similar. The dashboard is completely based on data that you already report. There's nothing new being collected for this, and there's no new burden on you. Basically, you submit your normal ROS data to HUD every year, and HUD reviews it, and then we add it to the dashboard. The current version has data for the fiscal year 17 through fiscal year 19 reporting periods. And the data that you just submitted last month is currently being reviewed by HUD, and it will be added to the dashboard once that process is complete. And anybody that you mark in your data as a ROS participant is included in the dashboard. Now, I want to do a quick poll of everyone just to help us get a sense of the level of familiarity with the ROS data among the people who are here in the audience today. So when you answer the poll, your name is not going to be shared. We'll just show the general results. So Jean, it looks like you've opened up the first poll, and we'll give everyone just a minute to select their answers off on the right. And don't forget to click that submit button once you type your answer or click your answer. I'll give you just about another minute to respond, and then I'll ask Caroline to give us a quick summary of the results.
We have just a few people who haven't clicked submit yet. Please be certain to click submit. And if you don't see submit, you may need to scroll down a bit in order to see it.
All right, and I think we're ready, Jean, whenever you're able to close that poll. Perfect. All right, Caroline, do you want to give us a quick sense of what you see?
Sure. So I'm seeing that there are grantees from across the years, but there are a lot in 2019, 59 grantees from 2019. I'm also seeing that a lot of the grantees here today have submitted data to HUD before for ROS data.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, that was always good to see. And thank you to everyone for answering the poll. It's always helpful to see this sort of baseline before we jump in. So with that, we'll keep moving. Perhaps maybe the most important part would be how the dashboard can help grantees like all of you. So first of all, it helps you see the reach and the progress of your ROS work in a way that's focused on program priorities like services provided and participant outcomes. It also helps you compare your program's activities and outcomes to those of grantees who are similar to you. And ultimately, it can help you identify where and how you can strengthen your performance, including how better data submissions can more accurately reflect your performance. Okay, now we're almost ready to start our demo of the dashboard itself. Before we do that, though, it looks like we've gotten a few questions. Caroline, are there any of those that we have not gotten a chance to answer yet and should answer out loud?
No, most of these questions are technical, so we are good to go.
Wonderful. All right. And again, feel free to submit questions at any point, and we'll pause periodically to answer those. Okay. So let's start our demo. The first thing that we're going to walk through is how to access the dashboard. So let's talk about where to find the link. You can start on the HUD Exchange website at hudexchange.info. And from there, you can use the search tool at the top to find the ROS program page. Works just fine to type ROS and click search. And this first result at the top will take you to the ROS program page on HUD Exchange, which is full of good information if you're not already familiar with it. Now, if you scroll down about halfway, you can see the section focused on the ROS data dashboard. And this heading here is a link which you can click that takes you directly to the dashboard itself. And note that anybody can access the dashboard without needing any special permission or login or anything like that. So you don't need to worry about keeping track of that. You can just use the link. And let's actually take a moment to make a bookmark so that you can find it more easily in the future. Now, in my browser, that is this little star button at the top of the page. And I'll go ahead and make a bookmark. And now I can click on the bookmark I've made to access the dashboard anytime in the future without having to go through the HUD Exchange website. And I think for me personally, that's the easiest way to access the dashboard. Okay, now before we begin exploring the dashboard itself, let's do another quick poll just to see where we are. Again, your name won't be shared here. We'll only share the overall results. Jean, could you go ahead and open the second poll, and we can just leave this one open for 30 seconds or so, give folks a quick chance to respond.
And Nathan, while we're waiting for that poll, are you able to speak to how live the data is that's reflected in the dashboard? One question is asked about, is it only updated after each report deadline or as the information is entered in Grant Solutions?
Good question. It is only updated after each report deadline because there is a review process with HUD before the data is loaded into the tool. So generally, it will be updated once a year and probably that'll be taking place a month or two after submissions to HUD are due. Good question. And I think we have our answers to the poll. Caroline, what does it look like?
So it looks like the majority of people can find and access without any additional help, but there are about 10 who may have some trouble and may need more help accessing the dashboard.
Excellent. Okay, that is good to hear. And again, anyone who is having trouble, do feel free to ask specific questions as we go, and we can also address those at the end. Okay. So now let's get on to the star of the show, which is the dashboard itself. So when you first open the dashboard, you start out on the home page, which we're seeing right now. And this is designed to help you navigate to whichever page it is that you're looking for. You can click any of these thumbnail images to open the page that it represents. And as you can see, the pages are divided into 3 main sections. First one is basic metrics, which has a general overview of your data. The second is services in depth for data focused on services provided. And the final is outcomes in depth, which is for data focused on participant outcomes. Now, before we look at a specific page, we have to tell the dashboard which grantee's data we're interested in looking at. And you're probably going to be selecting yourself most of the time for this, but today I'm going to select demo grantee, which is just data that we created for the purposes of this demo. And you won't see demo grantee in the dashboard. Again, it's just a tool for today. So to do that, we use this white box towards the top of the screen. So select a grantee. We can click in this little drop-down menu, and we'll see a large list. And this list contains any grantee who we have in the tools database. Now, if you don't see your name here, it means that we actually don't have any data from you in our database. And that probably means that you either haven't submitted a report for the past few years, or there's some other data-related issue. Then we're happy to talk individually if anyone is having trouble finding themselves here. But for the most part, everyone should be visible. So I'll click on Demo Grantee, and now any page in the dashboard that I access will be showing data that is specific to me. Okay, so now we're ready to go. Let's start on the overview page from the basic metrics section. And that's this first one at the top left. So we'll click on that thumbnail to open the page. And this page has the most basic information about your ROS work. Most of the info on this page is available in more depth on other pages. So if there's something of interest, you can follow up and learn more. But this is your quickest reference to the top level data. Now, the top left of this page has information on the number of participants, both overall and in specific populations. So we can see that Demo Grantee has 502 total participants, and 11% of them are elderly. What does participant mean exactly in the context of the dashboard, though? Well, it's a very reasonable question to have, and we are going to look it up in the glossary, which is built into the tool. So to do that, we'll use this button at the very top right that says Home. Now that button from any page on the tool will take us right back to that home page that we started on. And to get to the glossary from the home page, we're going to click on this question mark button at the very top right. And clicking the question mark will open another series of buttons, one of which says Glossary. We can click that, and it takes us to the beginning of the built-in glossary for the data dashboard. To get to participant, we can use that arrow at the top right to page through the alphabet until we get to P. And we can see now that a participant is defined as any ROS-eligible individual who completes an intake needs assessment with the ROS Service Coordinator. Now, this glossary has a lot of the really important terms and concepts that are used throughout the data dashboard, and we encourage you to use this as your first resource if there's something that you want to learn more about or a term that you're not familiar with. Okay, so let's go back to that overview page. I'm going to click that Home button again at the top right to go back to the home page, and then I'm going to click back into the overview section that we were looking at before. Now, on the right side of the overview page, we have information that's generally focused on services provided. So we can see over here that 83% of demo grantees, people with disabilities, received at least one service. And if we scroll down a bit, we can see that 56% of demo grantees' family participants received one or more services related to health and wellness. Now, if you wanted to learn more about what family was defined as in the context of the data dashboard, you would be able to go to the glossary and look it up under F, and there you would see that it refers to people who are not elderly and do not have disabilities. In other words, people who are classified as work-able adults and youth. Now, over on the bottom left of the overview page, we have information that's focused on participant outcomes. We can see here that 4% of demo grantees' family participants enrolled in an education program, and that among demo grantees participants who are elderly or have disabilities and appear in the database for multiple years, 16% of them increased or maintained their access to healthcare. Okay, now before we move on, we have another quick poll just to gauge where everyone is. Jean, would you be able to open that next one? And while we give people just a minute here to answer, Caroline, are there any questions that we should turn to?
Yes. One question is, if an FY 2019 grantee just submitted their first report, when will this data show up in the dashboard?
A good question. We are hoping it shows up pretty soon. We are going to be conducting our back and forth with HUD to get all of the data reviewed and make sure that there's no personal information that we need to avoid showing. And from there, we'll be able to load it into the tool, which is a pretty quick process, but depending on the amount of back and forth that is required with HUD, it can take a few months. So right now we're targeting the beginning of 2021. All right, I think we can go ahead and close the poll, Jean, whenever you're able. Perfect. And Caroline, how's it look?
So it looks like almost everybody feels comfortable in finding their way around the overview page, but about 14 or so would need additional help to start exploring their data.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for that. And if you are among those 14, then feel free to ask questions in the Q&A or at the end if we have extra time, and we will try to get that sorted out. Okay. So from here, let's go back to the home page and move into the next area that we're going to focus on. So we will scroll back up and use that same home button at the top right. From there, we'll return to the home page. So let's take a look at the services provided page, which is from that services in-depth section in the middle. So we'll click on that thumbnail to enter that page. And for a quick summary of what this visualization is for, we can take a look at this summary sentence, which is available in the white box right underneath those tabs that you can use for navigation. So it's probably a little small on the screen, but here we have this view shows the most commonly received services within each service category by participants from the selected grantee. A larger box size indicates a more commonly received service for this grantee's population. And every visualization has a little summary sentence like this right above it. And this is a great first place to be if you are trying to get a sense of what is shown on a given page, especially when you're first getting used to the dashboard. Okay, so from there, let's look at the data that we have. It looks like, based on this blue category here and how large that category is, those blue boxes, we see that demo grantee provides the most services in the case management category. And it looks like within that category, service coordination was the most common specific thing provided. And we can see down below that service coordination was provided at least one time to a total of 806 participants. Now, this visualization is designed to make it easy to see the services that you provide to the most people. And it's not designed to show detailed information about every service that you provide. There are other pages in this services in-depth section that can give you that more specific information. And we don't have time to tour those today, but we do encourage you to dive in between now and the next webinar. Okay, so now we want to hear from you. In the chat, we would like you to write a quick sentence telling us one observation that this visualization allows you to make about Demo Grantee's ROS program. So if you could type that in the chat to us panelists, then Caroline will pick a couple observations to share with the group anonymously. Jean, if you could turn the chat on, that would be great. And again, we're looking for one observation that this visualization allows you to make about Demo Grantee's ROS program.
And just a reminder, the chat button is in the very bottom right corner to the right of participants.
And Nathan, while we wait, one question that came up is, if a resident received services in year 1 but not year 2, they wouldn't be in the submitted year 2 data. How is the improvement relative to prior year determined?
That's a good question. We look at any 2 consecutive years in the data. So if a participant was reported in any 2 years in a row, we look at that. And if a participant has been reported for 3 years or more, then we look at each of those 2-year spans separately. So if someone maybe stayed the same 1 year but improved the next year, they would be shown under both of those categories. And we'll spend more time talking about improvements over time in one of those future webinars that gets into more advanced use of the tool. Let's give people maybe another minute or so to answer that question. And again, what we're looking for is one observation that this visualization allows you to make about Demo Grantee's ROS program. Take just another minute to type up your response to that, and then we'll have Caroline share a few of those. And I think we have time, Caroline, for maybe a half dozen or so, 6 or 7. All right, let's leave the chat open so folks can continue submitting answers. But Caroline, do you want to talk us through a little bit of what you're seeing?
Sure. So it seems that grantees are really interested in how this dashboard allows to compare across programs, as well as the ability to analyze and compare data with other agencies. Another comment is that it allows us to see if we are meeting the ROS goals from our summary when applying. And you're able to see where a need of a specific service in the area that you're viewing is. It also it clearly shows the service that is being provided the most, which in this case is case management, as well as which service is being provided the least, which in this case is housing.
Excellent. Those are all great takeaways from this. And again, this is really the highest level overview of different services being provided. And if you are really interested, say, in health and wellness, then you can drill into that more in the other pages and see all of the nuts and bolts of who is receiving health and wellness services, which specific health and wellness services are most common or most rare, and everything like that. We encourage you to do all of that exploration on your own. All right. Caroline, do we have any questions that we can answer? We're doing pretty well for time, so happy to answer any questions that folks have so far.
Let's see. One question is, will this information be loaded based on our last annual report?
Yes, it is based on every annual report that we have from fiscal year 2017's reporting period up through the present, and we'll continue updating it with future reports as they're submitted. Anything else?
Another question is, will the dashboard list all improvement relative to the prior year or just the top 5?
It depends on what page you're looking at, but we have a lot of different visualizations within different pages of the dashboard that speak to all sorts of different improvement year over year. So that includes things that are specific to outcomes, and we'll actually get a quick look at one of those in a minute. It includes things that are specific to services and even some baseline demographic information. So that will be shown throughout the tool.
Another question is, given the diversity of the Ross programs, how are the metrics standardized to be able to make the comparison data?
This is a good question, and this is something that we're going to spend a lot more time focusing on in a future webinar. But when you are looking at the pages that allow comparisons across different grantees, there are a lot of tools that we provide so that you can choose who is included in that group to which you're compared. So you can say, I want to compare myself to other grantees who also focus on elderly population or populations with disabilities. Or I would like to compare myself to grantees who focus on family populations. And for more recent grantees who have selected their area of need in the Ross within the Ross program, then you can even filter to say, I have selected health and wellness as an area of need that I'm specifically focused on, and I would like to compare myself to other grantees who are also focusing on that same area of need. So we've done a lot, and we've had some focus groups with individual Ross grantees, some of whom I hope are in the audience today. Hello. And we've worked hard to make this as much of an apples-to-apples comparison as we can. Are there any other questions, Caroline?
One final question that I think may be relevant is, do non-participants hurt the data outcome because they are not assessed?
So they do not hurt your outcome, but they are also not included in any of the visualizations. You can see on that overview page that we started at in the beginning, you can see the number of non-participants that were included in your report, and they don't hurt you in any way. They don't bring down your averages or anything like that, but they're not included in these views. Part of the reason for that was that we heard from grantees that typically non-participants are not receiving as many services as participants, and we didn't want to include them in an average. For example, let's say an average number of services provided or an average monthly earnings outcome. We didn't want to include non-participants in those averages for fear that they would bring the averages down and not be a fair representation of all of the work that our service coordinators are doing to work with their participants. And it looks like we're getting a few questions in the chat. Jean, would you be able to turn the chat off just to make sure that things show up in the QA category? It's a little easier for us to keep track of. But let's see, I'm seeing how long has the dashboard been available? The dashboard was made available a few weeks ago in October, so it is very new. I'm seeing a question about who qualifies as non-participants. Ultimately, this is determined by what you select when you report your data. So when you report and send your submission to HUD, everyone in your submission is marked either as a participant or as a non-participant, and we use that definition. In terms of the program language, the Ross program defines a participant as someone who has received an intake needs assessment from the service coordinator. Let's see. Any other questions in that? How far is the look back in this system? This goes back to the fiscal year 2017 reporting period. And let's see. I think that's everything I'm seeing. Caroline, anything I've missed?
No, I think that covers most everything right now.
Excellent. These are fantastic questions, everyone, and please do continue to put these in the Q&A section as we go, and we'll make sure to answer as many questions as we can. All right. Now, let's turn back to the dashboard. We're going to head to the home page. With that button at the top right of the screen again. And from there, we're going to move into the employment page in the outcomes in depth section. That's down at the bottom off towards the right. So I'll click that thumbnail to go into that page. And each page in this outcomes in depth section focuses on a different type of outcome. So we'll look at this page today, but we encourage you to explore those other outcomes too. Those are monthly paid earnings, access to care, education, and public benefits. And you can get to those from the home page with those thumbnails, or you can get to them by clicking their names in the tab bar near the top of the screen, which shows all pages in the current navigation section. So in this case, that's all the different pages in the outcomes in depth section that we currently have selected. So let's look at our summary sentence again to get a sense of the general purpose of this page. That's that white box right above it. So here we see this view shows the distribution of employment status among the selected grantees participants and its changes over time. Okay, that's pretty clear, but let's get a little bit more detail about how to actually read the visualization that's in front of us right now. So to do that, I'm going to click this See Example button that is available towards the top right of the page with the little magnifying glass icon. And every page has one of these, and it's a great way to get a little bit more detail about what's shown, how it's calculated, and how to read the visualization itself. So we'll click that box and see this little pop-up appear. It's probably a little small on the screen, so I'll read some of the highlights aloud. This page shows the distribution of employment status among the selected grantees participants. Under this heat map format, the highest values are shaded the darkest in color. Below, this information is broken down by year-over-year change. That's increased, maintained, or decreased. The following are several of the data points shown in the below example. Now, these, by the way, these See Example descriptions are in reference to the screenshots that are available right below them. So the numbers will be different than for your own data. This is just a way to get a sense of how to read the visualization and then turn back to your own data. So we'll walk through that process. The See Example text says, among the selected grantees family participants, 9 were employed full-time in the last month at the time of reporting. And that is illustrated by this red arrow with the 1 label. That data point tells us about how many of the selected grantees family participants were employed full-time in the last month at the time of reporting. Now below, that arrow labeled number 2 shows us that between the years 2017 and 2019, 5% of family participants with multiple years of employment data increased their level of employment. All right. I think that gives us enough to look back at demo grantees data. So in order to hide this See Example box, I'm going to click that Hide Example button, which is where the See Example button used to be at the top right, and the box will disappear. And now we can turn to our own data and look at demo grantee. So we can see that among demo grantees family participants, the most common employment status is part-time worker employed in the last month, with 20% of participants falling into that category. And among family participants in the category who are in the database for multiple years, down at the bottom, we can see that 11% got to that employment status by an increase in status, and 85% got there by maintaining it from a previous year. Okay, now let's hear from you again. Jean, I'll ask you to turn the chat back on, and what we'd like you to tell us this time is, if you were demo grantee, how would you react to this data? And as before, Caroline will pick a couple observations to share anonymously. So in that chat box, we would like you to tell us, if you were demo grantee and this were your data, how would you react? And feel free to think about this one for a few minutes. Spend some time looking at this and consider that the 20% figure that we've talked about and anything else that you take away from this data. And be as specific as you can here, because we're really interested in hearing what your reaction to this might be. And this is, of course, the demo grantee, but I think the exercise is really helpful when looking at your own data in the same way. Go ahead and take a few minutes. Don't rush through this one. We've got the time. And again, we're looking here for if you were demo grantee and this were your data, how would you react to it? All right, let's take about 30 more seconds, and then we can leave the answer in, we can leave the chat in and continue seeing answers.
Hey, Nathan, you kind of go in and out sometimes on the computer. I don't know, on the sound. I don't know if other people are having trouble hearing you sometimes.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. How is the audio for others? I could try to call in if it's not good.
I know she was having trouble hearing you.
Got it. Well, if others are having issues, do let me know. And if it continues to be an issue, let me know, and I'm happy to try another audio connection.
It could be also on my end, too.
Okay. It looks like
most people seem to think they're having problems. You're doing just fine.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks for the heads up, Jeff. Okay. I think we can go ahead and start reading through some questions. So, Caroline, do you want to walk us through some of what you're seeing?
Sure. So one response is that I think it gives a positive way to compare progress over time for participants. One grantee said, I struggle with this category due to residents starting and stopping employment within the year. Another response, oh, go ahead.
Oh, just going to say we totally hear that. It is a little challenging to have these yearly snapshots of something that can change so much month to month, but that is something that we're actively thinking about, so we appreciate that. Sorry, go ahead.
Another response is, demo grantees' data availability for the performance metrics needs to improve. It is only 50.6%. Also, there are a grand total of 61% participants at unknown employment level. I think I would collect more info from my participants.
That's a great answer, yes. And I'm going to touch on this in just a moment, and we'll focus more on it in a future webinar. But one of our goals in providing this data dashboard is to help everyone get a sense of where their data availability is strong. In other words, where they're doing a really good job of collecting and reporting data, and where maybe exactly as this answer says, it would be worth investing in some data collection improvements. So that's a great observation, and that's something that we're going to talk more about. Great. Okay.
Another response is, this is interesting to follow at this time because of COVID as well.
Very true. Yes, absolutely. Anything else? We've got time for a few more.
Sure. So one participant said, and this is similar to earlier, that they would like to see more employment quarterly data.
Mm-hmm.
And one response is, it depends upon the job market and level of education of this group to see if this is favorable or not.
That's a really good point. And we're hoping that grantees will be looking at this in the context of their own populations. Who do you serve, and how do these numbers look for you? And that means the year-over-year comparisons are really helpful. It means that those carefully selected comparisons to other grantees who are similar are important. And it also just means looking at this using your own intelligence as a human being and not walking away from any particular number with a conclusion that you draw without putting it in context. We don't anticipate this being a tool that will be used for any particular type of evaluation without any other context or comparison. We're not going to take a number in this tool and run with it without thinking twice. Seeing a couple questions also about age groups, and this is helpful feedback. We don't offer that currently, and if there is interest in this, which there might be because I see a few people, then that's absolutely something that we could consider adding in the future. Seeing these age groups at 18 to 30 and 31 to 49, et cetera. So that's helpful to know, and we can look into adding that in. Thanks. All right. Caroline, anything else, or should we go ahead and move on?
I think we can go ahead and move on.
Excellent. Okay. Well, as the answer that referenced data quality has picked up on, we do want to call attention to one other thing that you can see on pretty much every visualization. So off to the right here, we see two data availability indicators. And again, these are on almost every page. These are basically designed to show the quality of the data that each visualization is based on. And that can give you a sense of how confident to be in what you're seeing. So if you see really low data availability, then you might want to take a grain of salt with what you're looking at. But if you see really high data availability, then you can be more confident that it's a fair representation of the participants that you serve. These can also, we think, help point out areas where your data collection and reporting process might have room for improvement. So if you see that your data availability is generally really good, but there's one or two visualizations where you're struggling, maybe like demo grantee is here in the employment section, then you know that you can target that area for some data collection improvements. The way these work is that essentially they look at every data point and count how many of them have meaningful data. So if you reported a participant's employment status in a given year, or even if you reported that you asked them about it, but they refused to answer, that data point would be considered available. That would be good. But if that field in your report is left blank, or you didn't ask, then it would be considered unavailable. Each page has two of these indicators. The top one here is called demographics, and that focuses on the data points that we use to categorize participants in different populations. So that would be the data that we use to determine age or disability status or something like that. And the other one underneath it is called performance metrics, and that one focuses on the data used in the visualization itself more directly. So in this case, it would be employment status. So for this visualization, it looks like demo grantee has 100% availability for demographics, which is great. That would show that they're doing a good job collecting and reporting data about their participants' age and disability status and things like that. But much lower data availability, only about 51% for the performance metrics, which would suggest that we would maybe work with them to spend more time on their process of collecting employment data. Again, we'll get into more detail about data quality in a future webinar, but for now, we encourage you to take a look at these indicators and at the data quality page in the basic metrics category. You can get there from the home page as usual, and it has all sorts of other information about data quality. It can be a great way to see how you're doing there. There's also more information about data quality in the glossary of the data dashboard, which is definitely worth a read if you're interested. Okay, we have one more quick poll for everyone. Jean, would you mind opening that up? Excellent, yeah. So based on demo grantees data availability here, how much confidence would you have in any conclusions that you draw based on this page? Take about a minute or so to answer this, and then we'll have Caroline summarize those results.
One question here is, if the data is only updated annually, then why does this only look at the last month? Can you explain some of how that appears on the screen?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that's just a product of the way that these ROS reports and data submissions to HUD work. Essentially, when you provide your submission to HUD, the employment data is a snapshot, and the yearly report contains one employment status, and it is essentially the employment status for the most recent month that we have data for, or that you have data for in your case management software. And so it is the most recent snapshot that we have available based on these yearly reports, and what month it actually is will depend on the grantee and depend on the individual participant. But we're hoping that by having this little snapshot, we can still see some amount of information about the overall trends. But it would definitely not be a good comparison year to year if you're looking at any one individual participant, because it is exactly this, a snapshot. So this is designed for overall trends a lot more than it is tracking anyone individually. Okay. Let's go ahead and close that poll whenever you're able, Jean. And Caroline, can you give us a sense of how much confidence people have with this data?
Yes, so it looks like the primary answer here is that grantees have some confidence in the conclusions that they're able to draw based on this page.
Good. Yeah, I would agree with that. You know what more than half of your participants are doing, but there's a lot that you don't know about. And so there's room for improvement for sure, but I don't think you need to completely disregard what you're seeing. I think that's a very fair interpretation. Okay. So we're almost to the end of our tour, but before we wrap up the demo, I want to show one other useful feature that you can access from any page in the dashboard. So no matter where you are or which grantee you have selected, the URL in your web browser up at the top will stay exactly the same. And that means that if you want to send somebody else a specific visualization that you're looking at, you can't just copy the link from the address bar. So instead, to do that, you can scroll down to the very bottom of the visualization, like you see here. It's almost off the screen, and click this little button with the 3 dots. And this open will pop up. You might have to scroll up again to see it. And at the bottom of the pop-up, there is a little box labeled link. And it's got the URL in it that you can copy and share with anybody to send them directly to the specific visualization that you're looking at. And if I wanted to do this just from the home page, as I've done right now, essentially what I'll get is a link that will take me back to the home page with my grantee already selected, which is a useful thing to have. So what I'm going to do is copy that URL, go back up to the bookmark that I made earlier of the data dashboard, and edit the URL to be the one that I have just copied. And I'll hit save. And from here on out, when I click that bookmark, it will take me to the home page with my grantee pre-selected. You can also use this anytime you want to share a visualization with somebody else over by either by email or in a blog post or anything like that. And right next to it, there's another button in that same little toolbar underneath a visualization, and you can use that to download a copy of the visualization, which will let you print it or save it as an image for an archive or anything else like that. So those are the best ways to share visualizations or keep copies or quick access for yourself. All right. So this concludes our short tour of the dashboard. And let's recap the key takeaways from today. We have just taken a first look at the new data dashboard, which is designed to help ROS grantees understand the reach and the performance of their ROS work. You can access it via HUD Exchange on the ROS program page. The dashboard captures numerous metrics that are designed to show program activities and participant outcomes over the next several years. Now, after today's webinar, there are a few things that we encourage you to do next. Most importantly, spend some time exploring the dashboard and digging into your own data. And take advantage of those built-in help features that we've seen today. That's the summary sentences at the top of each visualization. That's the See Example button towards the top right. And that's the glossary, which you can access from the home page by clicking the question mark button at the top right of the screen. We also invite you to keep track of any questions that those built-in resources don't answer and submit them to us when you're registering for the next webinar on November 19th. That's 2 weeks from today. We'll devote most of that webinar to answering your questions, and you can register for that in the same place that you registered for this webinar. There's a link on the page that appeared when you first joined this meeting. Now, we are also excited to offer opportunities for individualized technical assistance. We can provide one-on-one help with using the data dashboard, interpreting your data, and improving your data quality. And this is provided by me and HUD, both program office and or field office staff, depending on your needs. And our reservation website is now open for grantees to schedule a time, and that's on a first-come, first-served basis. And you can schedule a time directly on the website. You just pick the time that works for you and answer some questions about what you hope to accomplish during the session. And the URL to do that is ross-ta.ucanbook, all one word, .me. Now, it looks like we have some time for questions. We actually have a lot of time for questions. So, Caroline, do you want to lead us through that?
Sure. So there have been several questions about whether or not the presentation and the PowerPoint will be emailed to participants afterwards.
Yes, we will be posting these eventually on HUD Exchange, and we will make that available to you all.
So another question that has come up several times is there going to be some feature that allows for variables that occur, such as regional employment trends and life events such as COVID?
That's a great question. I would love to do something like that. We don't have anything of that nature planned right now, but it's helpful to know that that's of interest. We can absolutely consider adding that in the future.
Another question is, will this system include the FSS program?
No, this is just for the Ross SC program.
Are there written instructions or a guide for navigating the dashboard?
We have provided that in the form of those interactive tools within the dashboard itself. So the glossary section that you can access from the home page, the little summary sentences at the top of each visualization, and maybe most importantly, the See Example button at the top right of every page. And we're pretty confident that you will be able to dive in and start exploring on your own and read up on each individual visualization as you visit it. And we encourage everyone to spend some time playing around with their own data and getting familiar with the dashboard through the use of those tools, the glossary, the summary sentences, and most importantly, those See Example buttons. Now, under that same question mark button that takes you to the glossary from the home page, there are a couple other pieces of background information, and those are also worth looking at too if you're curious.
Another question is, can Ross grantees download their specific data or Crosstab?
So there is some ability to do that through a link at the top of the dashboard, which can take you to the summary tables. And those are essentially a non-visual representation of the same information. And those can be downloaded in a few different formats. And it's also a helpful way to interactively on the web page view your data in a tabular format. So that's the short answer. Not from the graphic version of the dashboard, but the dashboard at the very top does include a link to that tabular view, which can do what you need.
So there are a couple of questions asking about accessing the dashboard and how you do that. Are you able to show how to access the dashboard again?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's walk through that. I'm going to find my slides. Bear with me for a moment. Okay. So the easiest way to get to the dashboard for the first time is through the HUD Exchange website, which you can get to at hudexchange.info. And from there, you can use the search tool at the top right. That's that magnifying glass. And I've had plenty of success just typing ROS into the search and clicking search. And this very first result at the top is the ROS program page on HUD Exchange. And if you're not familiar with the ROS program page, there is a lot of great stuff in here. I would definitely recommend spending some time on the page. But specific to the dashboard, if you scroll about halfway down, there is a section that talks about the dashboard, and you can click on that heading, ROS SC Data Dashboard. And by clicking the link, it will take you directly to the dashboard live online. And you don't need any special login or account information or permission or anything like that to access it. You can just click the link. And if you want to make this process a little quicker in the future, then you can use your browser's bookmark function. So for me, that's that little star button in the address bar, which I can click and add a little bookmark and click done. And now anytime I want to return to the dashboard in the future, I can just use that bookmark and jump directly there without needing to go through the HUD Exchange page. I hope that answers the question, but do feel free to ask a specific question if there's a part of that process that is giving you any trouble.
Another related question is, can you compare year-to-year performance?
Yeah, good question. That's definitely something that we've built into the tool. And there are a few different pages where that is available. So one of them from the homepage is outcomes over time, which you can see it's the third thumbnail in that first row, the basic metrics section. So that gives you a glance at how outcomes change over time. And that is essentially year-to-year performance. And then down below, you can also look at services over time to see how that has played out. And if you're interested in more specific outcomes, then a lot of those outcomes in depth sections, I believe that's, I think every single one of them, has some year-over-year data that you can use for comparison purposes. So I'll open up our example that we saw today, which was the employment data. So here on the top half of the employment screen, we see a snapshot of employment level among demo grantees, ROS participants. And at the bottom half, we see essentially the year-over-year changes. The way this works is every column represents an employment category, and every row represents whether a participant arrived in that category by increasing their status, maintaining their status from a previous year, or decreasing their status from before. So what we can see here, if we look at that most popular category, part-time worker employed in the last month, we can see that 85% of participants who are in that category got there by maintaining that status from the previous year, and 11% got there by increasing their status from the previous year. And again, this is only calculated for participants who are in the database 2 years in a row. And it could be any 2 years. Any other questions, Caroline?
Yes. Is it possible to sort all or select grantees by data availability from high to low or low to high?
Good question. There are some ways to explore the different grantees' data availability from the dashboard by state, which is something that you can access from the homepage of the tool up at the top. Let me find an image of that. At the top right here next to the question mark button, we see data dashboard by state and data dashboard tables. So the first one will take you to the data dashboard by state, which has another data availability view, which is specifically designed to help you understand how different grantees' data availability differs. And you can see who's doing really well, you can see who might be struggling, and you can dive in from there to look at the specifics. And right below it, I'll just note briefly, that data dashboard tables button is the one that will take you to the tabular view, which can be used for crosstabs and exports.
If a grantee sees that their agency is misspelled, who can they contact to correct the spelling and or be sure that that's their data?
That is unfortunate. I'm sorry. The data is all pulled directly from the yearly submissions to HUD. So I think the best option would be to get in touch with the HUD program office, and they can help you with the process of amending that. Any other questions from anyone? And this would be a good time where I think we can take questions over the phone. If anyone wants to ask a question out loud, feel free to use that raise hand button that Jean mentioned before. And Jean, could you give us a quick refresher on where that is?
I sure can. So if you are connected to the audio on the computer, or if you used Call Me, you should be able to click on the participants list on the right-hand side. And then at the bottom of that screen of panelists, there should be a little hand icon. If you are not connected through the computer audio and you are only on your phone, but you want to ask a question, you can press *3 on your phone to raise your hand.
Hey, Nathan. This is Trey.
Hi, Trey.
And I just wanted to, before folks start answering or asking questions, put a plug out there for the technical assistance that we are offering to grantees, really for those that are struggling with reporting. For example, you may recognize that you have low data availability or not sure how to report on your events. We are offering this TA and want to really work with those that really need that help around their reporting their data and their data availability and quality. So if that is you and you think that you need that data availability, don't hesitate to register. This is something that we want to encourage our grantees to do because we want to see you guys all succeed and show how great your programs are doing and report that to HUD. Back to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Trey. That's a really important message, and I appreciate it. Yeah, we are offering this because we understand that this tool is a much more in-depth look at the data than has been available before, and so it is absolutely natural to see your data and immediately have some questions. That is exactly what this TA is designed to help with. So please do take advantage of that. We would love to see you. All right, Caroline, do you see anyone with a raised hand? If you select someone, then we can have Jean unmute them and they can ask the question on the phone.
Yes, so we have 2 raised hands right now, and the first one is Kimia Sears, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
My question was answered. Thank you.
Ah, excellent. Glad to hear it.
Don't forget to lower your hand, please.
The other question, or the other raised hand that I'm seeing, is from Shauna Shelton.
Yes, my question is, so I'm looking at my overview, and it's showing that I've got like 29 non-participants, but I didn't have any non-participants that I reported. So I'm curious why, and I had more participants. So I'm just kind of curious why that is skewed like that.
That's a good question. What we use to determine whether someone is a participant or not is a piece of data that comes from those yearly reports. And if that's not something that you are setting directly, it's likely something that your case management software is setting automatically. So if you use Inform or Family Metrics or something like that, there's a good chance that it is making a selection there, maybe just by default. So that's something that we would be happy to take a look at with you during a TA session. So we're happy to sit down and straighten that out with you.
Okay, because I booked one. Is that what I needed to do? Was book a? Okay, all right. Thank you.
That's exactly right. Thank you.
There's also a question from April Hem. Oh, I see that hand went down. I'm not sure if April still has a question.
Got it. All
but
right.
A question that did come up in the chat is, can you see how you are measuring up to what is required in your grant expectation?
So that is not something that we have built into the tool. What we're hoping for right now is that the tool can be used to make comparisons between one grantee and similar grantees and comparisons over time. So how are you doing this year as compared to last year? And at this moment in time, we're not anticipating that we'll use the tool for strictly evaluative purposes, to say, is this good or is this bad? Are we happy with that performance or are we not happy with the performance? Where we really are focused on how you can improve year to year and how you can get a sense of what other grantees similar to you are doing. So that's not a feature that's built in right now, but you could absolutely, if it's of interest to you, you could absolutely do that comparison on your own by taking a look at your data in the tool and comparing that against your requirements directly. Any other questions, Carolyn?
Not any that I'm seeing right now.
Excellent. All right. Well, it looks like we may be able to give you 20 minutes back of your day. Anything to add, Trey and Dina, from your end?
This is Dina. All I would say is I thank you to all of the grantees for participating. I think we feel, and Trey, you agree that we had really good participation, great questions, and we look forward to working more with you and getting more of your questions in the second webinar and fine-tuning what we can offer you. And thank you to the wonderful team at APT for doing this too. You guys are fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep. Also, I think one really cool thing about the tool that you guys should all know and want to encourage, once, of course, you guys get your data where you want to see it, that you can share, this information or your data with other folks, either internal to your housing authorities or nonprofits or resident associations, as well as other funders that you may be looking at. We do have a print feature in Tableau, so the raw data dashboard, what you're seeing can be printed. So want to encourage you all not only to use the tool, but make sure that you're showing what you're doing to the folks, whether that be who you're serving, your other funders, or your folks at your own agency.
Absolutely. Thank you, Trey. That's a helpful message. All right. Well, unless there's anything else, I want to echo the thanks to all of you. This has been a fantastic group, and it's really gratifying to see the conclusions that you're drawing from this data already in the chat. And I am excited to see what happens when this is out in your own hands and you can get a start exploring the data from your own work. So I will end it there, and thank you all so much.